if you've been coming, we've been in this Beyond series, and last week we were we were in Luke, and we were in Luke 16, and where Jesus tells a story about two men. One guy that was rich and he lacked for nothing, and he had plenty, and there was another guy that sat outside of his gate, and he was a beggar, and yet the rich guy never did anything to minister to him, and they both die. And then the story is about what happens when they are spending the rest of their time in eternity. And so there's one guy who gives nothing for eternity, and then there's another guy that he longs for eternity. And if you'll remember, we talked about the whole thing about giving God what was his first, and we talked about that being the tithe, but then we talked about generous giving and what that would look like. And a guy that I'm going to interview today is a guy by the name of Mayernick. His wife, Suzanne, has been here in the last two services. She had to go pick up somebody from the airport. His son, Michael, came in to take her place. And so we knew Mike and Suzanne years ago when we were on staff at a church, and Mike and Suzanne were just married, and they served in our middle school ministry. And so Suzanne, being a pastor's kid, she understood and really took a liking to Shara. And so that was back in the day that when Cheryl would want to get a manicure, she couldn't because we didn't have enough money. And so she found out, and Suzanne looked at her and said, "Hey, I do those. Come to my house." Well, Mike and I were in an accountability group together, and Mike and I really had a really great friendship. We laughed a lot together. Where every time she would go get a manicure, I would just tag along so I could hang out with Mike. And we would sit and laugh and just have the greatest time. And here's what you don't know about Mike and Suzanne Mayernick. Before Beyond was ever a thing, before anybody was ever talking about building a new building and having to go to 4 services and all this crazy stuff, okay? Along with another couple by the name of Mike and Michelle Smalling, Mike and Suzanne Mayernick, before the bridge ever started, gave the largest financial gift to our church because he believed in TBF. Generosity has always been a part of their life. And so listen, I want you to give a great bridge welcome to Mike Mayernick as he comes and joins me on stage, would you? Don't fall.
Yeah, he told me.
He fell out in the hallway, so I'm glad you didn't fall, okay?
Yeah, he told me that was okay as long as I didn't fall before I got up here so I could stay. He didn't want to preach since he didn't prepare, so I'm here.
You just have to love people that encourage you, you know? You just have to love them, you know? So before we start, tell us the story about when you're waiting on Suzanne to come down the aisle and you're going to say, "I do," to marry this girl. Tell us about what happened.
All right. Mike. So he threw this question at me this morning. Maybe?
Yep.
Because we had this thing planned out. And he goes, "Hey, I'm going to ask you about your wedding." I'm like, "Okay, anything?" Or last night. So the way it was supposed to work is me and my groomsmen come onto the stage together, and then all the bridesmaids walk down and do their thing. I walk out. My groomsmen are nowhere to be found, like absent.
Did you get nervous in that?
And I knew something was coming. I'm like, my wedding coordinator was like fit to be tied. This is not going the way it's supposed to. And we're like, it's okay. It'll happen. So they end up coming out one by one. The first one puts an Easter basket in my hands, and he says, "I advise you to hang on to this or else you're going to be in trouble." So I hang on to this basket. Then they come one by one and each pulling things out of their pockets and dropping them into this basket. And I'll just say it was like little honeymoon gifts. And I'll just leave that right there and let you take it where you want to go.
Yeah.
So we did end up getting married that day.
All right.
By the way, I knew Phil, so it's been 30-something years.
Over 30
Over 30 years.
Yeah.
I knew Phil when he was a dyslexic, agnostic, insomniac. He used to just lay in bed every night wondering if there was a dog.
I told you they were sharper than all the rest of the groups.
Yeah, y'all's response time, 8 o'clock was like,
huh?
Yeah. I was to see if you're awake at 11.
Yeah. I think even Mike even said most of y'all will get that at lunch. So see, I told you
They'll be talking about it at lunch going, oh, yeah, okay.
So here's a picture of your family. Introduce your family to us so we can know who we are.
This is my family, and I'll start from the left. My son-in-law, Josh, who's married to Tuta, right next to him. My son-in-law, Davey, and my 2 grandsons, married to my daughter, Grace. That baby in her tummy is now here as of a week and a half ago. There's my daughter, Josie Love, right next to me and Suzanne. And then this was about 3 months ago at my daughter Miller Ann's wedding. That's her and her husband, Parker. She's the one with the wedding dress on. There's Michael, my eldest son, and Annabelle, who's right under him. And then far right is Joshua and Caleb.
All right.
So there's the Mayernicks.
Dude, your quiver is full.
We got to get, we have a big photography bill because every time we get a picture made, somebody else has a baby or something or gets married. I'm like, we got to get a new picture. I'm like, okay. Speaking of money.
Speaking of money, yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us about, I want you to tell, even though Suzanne's not here, I want you to tell everybody about Suzanne's ministry that she has.
So obviously, if you look at our family photo, you can tell that all our kids are not biological. If you can't tell, well.
Something's wrong.
So you'll hear me talk about your plans and God's plans. I've always said there's your plans and God's plans, and your plans don't really count. It's a good thing to make plans. That's what I do for a living, but you have to hold on to them really loosely. So we had 3 kids. We thought we would have 3. Number 4 came along as an accident, a beautiful accident. And then we were done. So we were done at 3 and then 4. And then to keep a long story short, about 20 years ago, Suzanne felt it first, this call to adopt a child. And within a couple of days of us, she heard the Lord speak to her in church. And I was sitting right next to her and I didn't hear it. Like, what? But it became really clear to both of us, like within about 2 or 3 days, that this is what we're called to do, to the point, we'd never talked about it, but to the point that if we didn't do it, we weren't being obedient. And I had really never been in that place, neither one of us in our life. When you hear people are called to do something, how do you know? Like, that was the one moment we're like, wow, we have to do this. This is our calling. So we brought Joshua home soon thereafter. He was the one on the far right. And then pretty quickly, we both knew that we were supposed to adopt again. So long story short, we were done at 4, done at 5. Caleb came home. We were done again. Josie Love came home from Uganda a few years later at 3 years old. We were done then. And then finally, Tuta came home at 19 years old. She'd aged out of an orphanage in Honduras. So when Josie came home, she was number 7. She had a lot of health problems that we didn't originally know about. And her story is public, so I can say this. She was HIV positive and had tuberculosis and had malaria. And we didn't find this out until we were literally about to get on a plane to come home with her. So that was somewhat of a crisis of faith for me, going, okay, Lord, this is not the plans that we had. Anyway, we finally got her home, got her some medicine. She's healthy. And we realized then that there were so many kids in Uganda that just slipped through the cracks. She was one of them that would have slipped through the cracks and probably died, just for basic things like lack of water, basic health care, food. So it was kind of born 16 years ago. It's called Love One International. It really started about 9 or 10 years ago, and that ministry exists to serve malnourished babies and malnourished kids in Uganda and spread the gospel to them and their families. And we let them know that the hope that they have is not in the food, but and the reason that we do it is not because it's the spiritual food that they need. So it's turned into this thing where originally it was, can we just take care of one, to now it's been thousands and tens of thousands of little babies. So
you talk about this word surrender. So talk to us about that whole thing and what surrender meant to you, as well as then how that played out in the diagnosis in what you got 3 years ago.
Yeah. So surrender is one of those words, right, that we as Christians use. And I'm more convinced that on this side of heaven, there is always going to be something for us to surrender. Like even when we feel like we've surrendered it all, you wake up and go, oh, don't know if I've surrendered that yet, right? Anybody relate to that? So I have come to this place of continuing to learn about what it means to surrender. And the funny thing about surrender is God really wants us in a place of total surrender. But when you think about it, that's not really where we want to be.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we want to keep control of it. I do, of as many things as we can. I think everybody at some level struggles with one of these three deep idols: significance, control, and comfort. Right?
Yeah.
For me, it's control. Like, I love to be in control of things. My son will tell you that, right, buddy? To a fault. But surrendering control is a lifelong process. And the opposite of control is trusting.
Right.
And it just doesn't. Rich Mullins is my favorite Christian artist of all time. And there's a line in one of his songs that says, surrender don't come natural to me. I'd rather fight you for something I don't really want than take what you give in dire need or in my need. So surrender's a hard thing, but I think part of our walk and our journey is a journey of constant surrender.
And how did that word play out in what happened to you 3 years ago?
So about 3.5 years ago, I started twitching. My muscles were twitching a lot. And I was like, this is not normal. Got a little bit worried and scared, started working out like crazy and getting in the best shape of my life. And I started getting weaker. I went to the doctor, and they, at that time, said that I just twitch, some kind of twitching syndrome. About a year later, so it's been about 2 years now, I go back to the doctor. I'd started experiencing some muscle weakness. So follow-up visit, went to Vanderbilt, and I'll never forget him coming back in after running the tests, and he said, I'm 80% sure that you have ALS, which is Lou Gehrig's disease. It's another name for Lou Gehrig's disease. Hit us like a ton of bricks, like a gut punch, because he goes on to say, you basically have 2 to 4 years to live, could be 18 months. And oh, by the way, there's 3 medicines that you can take that are approved by the FDA, and one of them has shown promise to potentially extend your life expectancy by up to 3 months in some patients. Like, that was the best news he could give me. I think I stopped listening after that. There's no good news in that. So that was just obviously a life-changing, because I have a lot of plans, had a lot of plans.
How do you navigate that? And then not only for you, but then how do you, having this, try to minister to your wife and how she's navigating all this?
A lot of prayer, and I wish I could tell you it was an easy road to navigate. In many ways, I would say it's harder on your mother than it is me, because she lives with the prospect of being alone. I'm living with the prospect of going to heaven. I want to be here. When I got my diagnosis, by the way, Phil asked her to speak too today, and we've spoken together on this, and it's harder for her than me. She goes, you don't realize how hard it is for me to stand up and talk about my husband dying. I'm like, I get it, so don't speak. After my diagnosis, I remember going home the next morning, and the first thing I wrote in my journal was Romans 8:28. And we got it up there. And we know that all things work together for good for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. If you've grown up in church, you know that verse. And you even say, yeah, I believe that verse. But I was challenged that morning, do I really believe that?
Man, yeah.
When tragedy strikes, Do you really believe that? It's much easier to quote the verse than to go, yes, wholeheartedly, 100%. Well, I believe it, but I'm also the type of person that wants to know why. Okay, Lord, show me the good. You told me some good can happen, all things work together for good, but would you please show me? Because I'd like to see it, because I really need to know that. And he doesn't promise us that, right? So in many ways, it's another layer of surrender for me to go, do I really trust him? And I do. It's just not the way that I want it to go. The other thing that I wrote in my journal, many things, but that morning was kind of my new bucket list, and it wasn't skydiving, Rocky Mountain climbing, 2.7 seconds on a bull named Fu Manchu. That was not the,
These people are from Lebanon and Mount Juliet. They're not from Williamson County, so they know country music. So
well, I knew I could quote Tim McGraw in here and probably get an amen, maybe. But what was on the list was things like just going from Romans 8:28. Lord, I know you can do good things from this. Help me surrender to what those are and understand as best I can what that means. And Lord, I know you can use all things. You can make all things new, and you do all things for good. And while this doesn't feel very good, I just have to trust that you can. And I want to give myself to that, and I want to surrender to that. And then I want to meet my 32 grandkids. That's what we took a poll with our kids not too long ago. How many kids do you think you'll have? And it won't work like this, but we counted, and there's going to be 32. If they're all right, and they won't all be right, but I want to meet every one of them, and I want to grow old with Suzanne, and I want to live a long, long time. Thankfully, I'm 3 years and 4 months into my symptoms, and 50% of the people who get this are dead within 3 years of symptom onset. So, still plugging.
Amen. If your kids think like you and Suzanne, you won't have 32. You'll have 64. Is what you'll have. So, yeah. So you talk about surrender, Mike, because ever since I've known you, you've been in financial planning, and so your job has always been for people's money to make a return, and you've always tried to multiply people's money. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about why is it such a difficult thing for business people or just people in general to surrender their finances, and talk to us about that and how you and Suzanne, how y'all view the finances and generosity about eternity, not just about the money itself.
Yeah. So if you pull up that verse from Matthew 6:19, this is from the Treasure Principle, Sermon on the Mount, and Jesus says, don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth, but where moth and rust corrupts, and thieves break in and steal, but instead store up your treasures in heaven, where moth and rust doesn't corrupt and thieves don't break in and steal. That verse, that concept, and by the way, the rest of that is for where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. In other words, you want you to have a heart for something, go put your money there and watch your heart follow, right? I mean, to me, that's what that means. So as a financial advisor, I did hit a period about 20 years ago where I'd found success, like by the world's terms, and God did move on me at that point to really think about, is all I'm doing helping rich people get richer, for lack of a better term, right? So I began down this journey of helping people see the importance of giving money away, right? Giving is so important. So I also wanted to work with people who give because, quite frankly, they're more enjoyable. People who live like this instead of like this are just more fun to work with, and they're happier people, and they have more joyful lives. So giving is as much about our heart as anything. It's not, y'all need a new building because he doesn't need to do 4 services because he will knock over dead maybe. So if there's no other reason to build a new building, it's to protect him. Sorry, I can do that with him. But early on, Suzanne and I, we just felt like, if you'll put up the Luke verse, this is from one of his parables, but at the end of this verse, he says, when someone's been given much, much will be required. And when someone has been entrusted with much, even more will be required. And this comes from that one of the wise manager stewards. And we always felt like we had been given a lot in a lot of ways. We didn't grow up with money, but if you're in this room and you live in this zip code, you probably are pretty blessed when you compare yourself to the rest of the world. And I've been to the rest of the world. I've been to third world countries, and we're all, relatively speaking, blessed. And I believe when we're blessed, we have a responsibility to give. Also, I've thought a lot about this lately. Why do we give? Why are we obedient, even to God? And I think three things. One, we have an obligation, and that's in the Bible. Like Paul talks about it a lot. We're obligated. Number two, I think I've always had a little bit of a healthy fear of the Lord, which is also biblical, right? I guess we're not supposed to have fear, but a healthy fear of the Lord is a good thing. That's the beginning of wisdom. Yeah. And then thirdly is gratitude. And where I've found myself more in this season of life is in that place of gratitude. And it's not as much gratitude of all the stuff I've been given, because we've been blessed financially, but it's gratitude for what he did for us. Yeah. Like, he gave us the greatest gift that we can't even comprehend. I can't comprehend sacrificing my son for all y'all. No offense. I don't know that I have that kind of love for the people in this room. And that's the kind of love he had for us. So a lot of times what we give, I hope it comes from just a heart of gratitude, because we can't carry it with us. Have y'all heard that saying, you never see a hearse carrying a U-Haul? You ever heard that? Right, you can't take stuff with you? Well, I actually saw a hearse carrying a U-Haul. I kid you not. It was about 3 or 4 years ago, and I'm on my way to a funeral, and I see a hearse going down the road carrying a U-Haul behind it. I felt like I'm being punked, and there's candy camera was somewhere.
So talk to us about, because you give counsel to so many people about giving.
Yes.
About giving income versus giving assets.
Yeah. So I always talk about having a lens through which to look. And I believe the tithe to your church is the start of giving. I believe, he talks about, the Bible's a lot about giving, and it's a lot about the kingdom. And I don't think that's an accident, right? What in our lives could be more important than thy kingdom come? Think about the Lord's Prayer. Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Then it gets to give us our daily bread, forgive us, protect us. How many times when we pray do we go to forgiveness, protection, provision before we even talk about thy kingdom come? Jesus was all about his kingdom. And our lives on earth are about his kingdom come. So I believe, yes, we're supposed to give our tithe to our church, first fruits. But the challenging thing is, yeah, but he actually owns it all.
That's good, yeah.
Right? We get in a habit of saying, Lord, God, here's yours, here's mine. But at the end of the day, he does own it all, and we're stewards of all of it. Does it mean we give it all away? No. If you're Bill Bright, maybe yes. But for most people, I got 8 kids, and I couldn't afford to give all my money away because I got to feed them. And there's also a responsibility to save. So I think giving out of income, starting at 10%, is a great rule of thumb. If you want to live a good life, financially speaking, and have peace, it's a great place to start. Giving out of assets is another story, because then you have to wrestle with, well, I've got these assets over here that I've accumulated, and if I choose to give out of those, I'm giving up something out of my pocket, right? Everything's a decision. If I give out of here, I got to give up something. It may be an earlier retirement, or it may be the new car. And I'm not telling you what's the right answer every time, but it is a healthy struggle to have for your whole life to wrestle with that. So I think it's a good thing to be able to give out of assets, because you go, oh, well, I was saving that for this rainy day or that rainy day or this purpose, but maybe God's leading you to give to something bigger than yourselves. At the end of the day, it's not about us. I got a shirt that says it's not about me. And I wear it sometimes just to remind myself it's not about me.
How has being diagnosed with ALS, how has that affected you, how you think about eternity?
I think about eternity a lot more than I used to. We all have a clock that's ticking that's going to end. I've just been given notice that mine might be sooner than I thought. Having an eternal perspective is all tied to giving. You know, if you ever heard the story of the dot and the line, if this little place right here represents the day we were born, eternity is like this line that goes on forever, like out that door, up Highway 70 to the interstate to Nashville and beyond, and it keeps going and going and going. And if you think about it in the scope of that, our life on that line is a little bitty dot.
Good. Yeah.
I mean, and it doesn't matter whether your dot is 20 years or 58 years or 88 years, it's still a dot, isn't it? In the scope of eternity. So I think we're just supposed to live for the line and not the dot. And I've been so guilty so many times of living for the dot. There's so many good things in the dot, but what we do with our dot determines a lot about what the line looks like for us. And I'm not talking about salvation, I'm talking about rewards. The Bible's very clear that like there are rewards in heaven, right? He will reward us. And this is, again, not a salvation issue. You can't work your way into heaven. We all know that. You can't give your way into heaven. But he does call us, once we know him, to be obedient in all things. And I think there are rewards for that. So we think about eternity a lot because it's smacking us in our face. And getting a diagnosis like mine just makes it even more like obvious, like, it's coming. But it's coming for all of us.
What do you find yourself thinking about now?
Oh gosh, a lot, but I have no greater joy than to know that my children are walking in the truth. Things become clear, like when you get hit with news like I've been hit, like what is really important. And your family is the most important thing, my children. And just, it gives me joy to see them walking in the truth. So I don't think about other things that I used to worry about quite as much. I don't even worry about money as much, and I used to worry about money a lot. Like, you know what? I can't carry that with me, and Suzanne's gonna be okay, so, believe it or not, I don't even watch the stock market every day, and I'm still working some, and that's what I do. So there has been there has been a good freedom in some ways. Like when you get the news like I got, you start, a couple of things happen. One, I was so used to ordering my life, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, you start having it ordered for you. I was always used to leading out of my strength, and now I'm going, well, how do I lead out of weakness? Totally foreign territory, very hard, but very healing. So God's teaching me a lot in this season of surrender and what it looks like in this space.
What do you think about, Mike, when you think about, to this point, why hasn't God healed me?
Why hasn't God healed me? Okay, does anybody watch The Chosen? Yeah? I love The Chosen. It's not the substitute for the Bible, but it's pretty spot on. And even when they take creative liberties, it's I think it's good how they do it. There's one scene in The Chosen where little James, anybody seen this scene? Little James comes up to Jesus and he says, hey, I've got a question. He says, you told us that we would have the power to heal people in your name. And he said, yes. And he said, you've seen it happen, little James. And he said, well, I have a question. If we can do that, why haven't you healed me? Because he had some sort of affliction. And Jesus looks at him and he says, number one, James, I trust you. But number two, he said, there's gonna be thousands of people who are able to tell that story about being healed, And think about the story that you're going to be able to tell if you praise me and worship me, even if I don't heal you. And for me, I pray for healing, but also I try to pray my prayers like Jesus in the garden. It's like, Lord, please take this cup from me. This is not what I want. I'm not afraid to die, but I am afraid of the process that this disease is going to do to me. Take this cup from me, but your will, not mine, is the prayer that I'm trying to hang on to and pray.
This is what I'd say.
What?
If God doesn't choose you, if God doesn't choose to heal you in this life, I'll see you on the other side.
We'll play one-on-one.
That's right.
You might be able to beat me for a change.
I don't know. I doubt that. I think the thing that we as a church have to ask ourselves is that, what would your life look like if you knew that you were going to die soon? How would that affect what you do with your time and with your treasures? Here's what I know for certain. We get so wrapped up with so many things here that we forget that every individual in this room is dying. And every person you know is dying. And every person you don't know is dying. So the question that we got to ask is that, what do we do with our resources? How do we pay that forward? I have watched a couple before he was ever diagnosed with ALS, they were giving their lives away. And I'll be honest, as your pastor, I'll be honest, I struggle. God, why haven't you healed him? I know God's sovereign. His ways are way above my ways. But the question that we need to answer is, okay, what do we do with what God's given us, right? The first question I want you to answer right now is this. If I were to die right now, where do I spend eternity? You can walk out here today knowing that I have received Jesus into my life and I know that Christ lives in me. You don't have to even worry about that. You can make that decision today. The other question you could ask is, okay, if I receive Christ, how am I stewarding what God's given me? Let me ask you if you would, just to bow your head and close your eyes, would you?